Welcome, everyone. My name is Peter Beans, and I'd like to welcome you to your OTF Connects webinar this afternoon. Just some quick comments before we get started. If you have any problems at all with your audio or anything, try to message me through the chat privately, and I'll do my best to help you. If you have any questions, I think we're going to run this fairly informally, so you can drop them in the chat, and then if I see them there, I'll read them out at a good opportunity. We'd probably like to ask you to leave your microphones off for now, and then we'll have an opportunity later on for questions. So welcome, and I'd like to turn it over. I'm honored to be your moderator for today's session with Andrea and Chantal entitled Métis Days of Significance. I'd like to start with a land acknowledgement. We acknowledge first and foremost that we are gathered in the province of Ontario on the traditional territories of various Indigenous peoples who have been present on this land known as Turtle Island since time immemorial. We acknowledge that this has been a meeting ground for generations. We are grateful to the stewards and caretakers of this land. As advocates, teachers, and educators, we understand our collective responsibility to honor, protect, and sustain this land. We further recognize and honor within the membership of OTF those who are Indigenous to this land. This practice of recognizing the ancestral and traditional lands in which we work, live, and play is a concrete action that we undertake as a first step towards reconciliation between Canadians and the Indigenous peoples of this land. But it is not our only step. Collectively and individually, we must seek to denounce the injustices and wrongs that have been committed against the First Nations, Métis, and Inuit peoples, and to dedicate ourselves to cultivating and maintaining relationships based on mutual respect and truth. One of our two facilitators this afternoon is Andrea Paquette-Weichert. Andrea has been employed by the Métis Nation of Ontario as a K-12 education and partnership advisor since 2019. She's partially bilingual, identifies as Métis from the Ottawa River region. She represents the schools of Southern Ontario. Chantal has been employed by the Métis Nation of Ontario as a K-12 education and partnership advisor since 2022. She's fully bilingual and represents the French school boards and several English boards across the province. She is a Métis woman and harvester from the Mattawa, Ottawa River Historic Métis community. And with that, I'd like to turn it over to Andrea and Chantal.
Thank you so much, Peter. Hello and welcome, everyone. We're so glad that you could be part of our professional development session that's focused on Métis Days of Significance in Ontario. Your commitment to learning about and honoring Métis culture is truly appreciated. As we go through today's presentation, feel free to take notes, and we'll have a question period at the end, so please hold on to any of your thoughts or inquiries until then. Additionally, we'll be sharing our contact information for any follow-up questions after the session. So thank you again for participating, and we hope that you find our session insightful and inspiring. So let's dive in. All right, so next, let's take a look at a valuable resource for educators. The Métis Nation of Ontario has created an online list of historical and culturally significant days that occur throughout the school year. This list is designated to help teachers incorporate Métis content into their lesson plans on these important dates. The list is available online, along with additional resources to support your teachings. You can access it through the link on the screen here. Let's explore how this resource can be a helpful tool in the classroom. Next, Andrea. And then, Andrea, I think this is your...
No, I didn't realize I was muted. So we're going to start off with the first Métis culturally significant day in your school calendar. So in 1980, at just 18 years old, Terry Fox was diagnosed with cancer. At this time, his doctors felt that his best chance of survival was the amputation of his right leg. Unable to forget the other cancer patients who were still on the cancer ward, Terry decided to do something to try and raise money for research. Terry walked from the Atlantic Ocean all the way to Thunder Bay, where unfortunately, the return of his cancer put an end to his walk. We are proud that Terry and his family are part of our larger Métis family. He exemplified the strength of his ancestors through his walk to conquer cancer. In 2021, the Métis Nation of British Columbia and the Terry Fox Foundation announced that they had partnered together to create a limited edition commemorative Terry Fox sash, which you can see on your screen here. All proceeds from the sale will go directly to the Terry Fox Foundation. The sash includes colors of blue and red, which were Terry's favorite colors.
Perfect. So next, let's talk about another significant day, which is Truth and Reconciliation Day, which is observed on September 30th and also known as Orange T-shirt Day. So the Orange Shirt movement began in 2013 as a legacy of the St. Joseph Mission Residential School commemoration project in Williams Lake, BC, Orange Shirt Day. Orange Shirt Day comes from the story shared by Phyllis Jack Webstad, and is a former student of the St. Joseph's and an Indian residential school survivor. Phyllis recounted her experience arriving at the school in 1973 at the age of 6, wearing a brand new orange shirt purchased by her grandmother. She explained that her shirt was confiscated upon arriving and never seen again. So the color orange came to represent the feelings of loneliness and worthlessness Phyllis experienced during this time at the mission. Now, the Métis are often forgotten in the residential school narrative. So it is important that this narrative be corrected, while that the Métis Nation were not taken from their families and sent to residential schools in a vast number, as much as the First Nations children were, but they still were taken and suffered the same sort of abuse and traumas. So now let's turn our attention to Treaty Week, which takes place from November 1st to the 7th. And discusses the significant historical context surrounding the Métis and their relationship to treaties. For much of Canada's history, the government followed a policy of not negotiating treaties with Métis communities. This was especially true as the government moved westward into what was then known as the historic Northwest. Instead of negotiating treaties, the government attempted to address Métis land claims through the Manitoba Act of 1870, or by offering half-breed script on an individual basis. However, in 1875, a distinct group of half-breeds known as the half-breeds of Rainy River and Rainy Lake became the exception to this policy. They were the one Métis group to formally enter into a treaty agreement, specifically an adhesion to Treaty 3. This marks an important moment for a moment in Métis history, especially for the Métis of Northwestern Ontario.
Okay, so Indigenous Veterans Day, we're moving into November now, or second week of November. The Métis have participated in many conflicts, both within Canada and around the world. During the War of 1812, the Northwest Company formed a Métis-only battalion, the Corps of Canadian Voyageurs. The Métis Voyageurs were an important asset during the War of 1812 because of their mobility, knowledge of the land and waters, and their resilient hardiness. There is evidence that this corps participated in the battles of Stony Creek, Beaver Dams, and Chrysler Farm, as well as the sinking of the HMS Nancy during the Battle of Lake Erie. Since the War of 1812, the Métis have fought for Canada in the Fenian Invasion in 1857, the Boer War, the Nile Crisis, the First and Second World Wars, and in many peacekeeping missions. Additionally, they fought against Canada in the Red River Resistance in 1869 and the Northwest Resistance in 1885. This memorial, featured here on the slide, is located in Confederation Park in Ottawa and was unveiled on June 21st, 2001. It is a national memorial to all Indigenous veterans. Moving forward, I'm sure all of you have heard of this day, and I really want this video to work. So Louis Riel Day is observed on November 16th each year. This day is the anniversary of Louis Riel's execution in 1885. Emina citizens, Emina chartered community councils, and communities hold events across the province to celebrate Métis culture, recognize the many contributions of Métis to Canada, and highlight the struggles that Métis continue to face. On this day, a special ceremony is held at the provincial legislature at Queen's Park in Toronto. This day serves as a poignant tribute to Riel's sacrifice and enduring legacy, promoting the celebration of Métis culture and advancing our collective journey towards reconciliation.
Agreement, the government recognizes the fact that is true, and that's the relationship we're building moving forward.
It has been an enormous amount of work with a number of milestones. Just to see the recognition from some of the past provincial leaders, it's so good to see that. We had such a wonderful time and experience at the signing of the self-government agreement with both Saskatchewan and Alberta. So I think that work is going to continue and see where we can take this to greater heights.
You know, the execution of Louis Riel was not, it was of course, you know, the tragic end of his individual life. But it was not just an assault on one person, it was an assault on the Métis Nation, right? It was an effort to silence the Métis people once and for all. We owe it to ourselves and to Riel to remember that, you know, he didn't die for himself, it was for his people, right? And you know, as we build these new relationships with federal and provincial governments, it's important that we never lose sight of the fact that, you know, the execution of Riel was just one crime committed against the Métis Nation. There were many others, right? The forced relocation of the Drummond Islanders, the broken promises made to the Sault Ste. Marie community by the Treaty Commissioner in 1850, the ignoring of the petitions in Penetanguishene and James Bay, and then the broken promises that were made in Treaty 3. Then there's what happened to our community in Agua Bay in 1967. Now, not ancient history, not a long time ago. The Ministry of Natural Resources came in, evicted the community, and burned their homes to the ground, right? That's not a long time ago. As we continue to pursue justice for those communities, I think that's how we pay tribute to Riel. It's by pursuing justice for those communities.
Northwestern Ontario has been home to a vibrant Métis community. Born of the fur trade, Métis families were located throughout Northwestern Ontario. They worked at trading posts, traveled to First Nations camps to trade furs, and could often be found visiting other Métis families along the waterways of Lake of the Woods, Rainy River, and Rainy Lake.
My ancestors were voyageurs, they were traders, they worked at the Hudson Bay posts, they were trappers, they were bush cutters, they were fishermen, people of the land.
The Métis developed a distinct culture and way of life. They had close relationships with First Nations in Northwestern Ontario. They traded with them, traveled and hunted with them, and often married amongst them. But the lives of Métis and First Nations would be forever changed as Canada made plans to open the West to settlers. First, it would need to secure the lands and waters of Northwestern Ontario before it could expand to Red River and beyond. In the 1870s, Canada began treaty negotiations with First Nations in the region. Métis interpreters, including Nicholas Chatelain and George McPherson, assisted at the negotiations. However, government policy did not allow them to participate in treaty making as a distinct people.
They were different. They did not think it was appropriate for them to sign the treaty or join the treaty as First Nations. But they knew they were different than non-Aboriginal people. In order to kind of settle that issue, the First Nations who signed the treaty said, we have these group of families, they're half-breeds, and we would like them to sign the treaty also.
But the chiefs were unsuccessful. When Treaty 3 was signed on October 3, 1873, the Métis were not included. Over the next 2 years, the Métis, led by Nicholas Chatelain, worked tirelessly to secure their rights with the Canadian government. Eventually, in 1875, they were successful. On September 12th, Nicholas Chatelain signed an adhesion to Treaty 3 on behalf of the half-breeds of Rainy River and Rainy Lake. The Treaty 3 adhesion promised the Métis reserved lands, annuities, and presents, the same benefits given to First Nations under the original treaty. More importantly, the adhesion was the first and only time in Canadian history that a collective Métis community was able to gain recognition under treaty as a distinct people. Their descendants remain in northwestern Ontario today.
The Métis way of life is the life that my family has been living for generations, and it's a connection to the land that has gone back for generations.
My Métis ancestors were born in this area, lived in this area, have died in this area, and we're still in this area.
So now we're moving into February. And on February 15th, while Canada celebrates its iconic red maple leaf flag, it's also important to recognize another significant symbol, the Métis Infinity flag. The Métis Infinity flag predates the Canadian flag by 150 years, making it the oldest Indigenous flag in Canada. The flag features a distinctive infinity symbol representing the immortality of the Métis Nation and the joining of two cultures. Though the exact origins of the infinity symbol remain debated, it has long been a proud symbol for the Métis people, signifying their resilience, unity, and cultural continuity. The flag itself is often depicted in two versions. The blue infinity flag is believed to have been designed by the Northwest Company, and the red infinity flag is believed to be associated with the Hudson's Bay Company. Both are symbols of pride and a reminder of the Métis' enduring presence and heritage. Next slide, please, Andrea. And then on March 31st, we celebrate Indigenous Languages Day. It's a time to honor and recognize the importance of Indigenous languages in preserving culture and identity. For the Métis Nation of Ontario, this day highlights ongoing efforts to revitalize Michif, the language of the Métis people. In 2022, the MNO Education and Training Branch launched the Michif Language Initiatives team, who are working hard to create resources and translate materials in French, English, and Michif. Their goal is to ensure that Michif is accessible and preserved for future generations. The decade from 2022 to 2032 has been designated as the International Decade of Indigenous Languages, with a focus on revitalizing and increasing the use of Indigenous languages globally. So once spoken across the Métis homelands, Michif was heavily impacted by colonization, which suppressed Indigenous languages. Today, the Métis Nation of Ontario is leading efforts to breathing new life into the Michif, providing online learning resources and making it available to Métis youth and anyone eager to learn. The revitalization of Michif is a powerful step in maintaining the Métis culture, and every effort made to helps us ensure that this beautiful language endures for generations to come.
I'm not going to try and share this video. We'll circle back to it at the end, if that's okay.
I've dropped the link in the chat for people, and I'll
Perfect.
make sure
Thank
that at the end.
Thank you.
All right, so now we're moving into the springtime. We're going to discuss the Daniels decision. So Métis leader Harry Daniels was a celebrated Métis politician and activist who fought for the rights of the Métis people. Fun fact, he was also a film star. He initiated the Daniels case in 1999. Following trial and appeal court decisions on April 14th, 2016, the Supreme Court of Canada ruled that the federal government has constitutional responsibility for Métis and non-status Indians, marking a historic victory for Indigenous peoples in Canada and ending a 17-year-long legal battle. As a result, the federal government is now legally accountable for Métis and non-status First Nation Indian interests. Unfortunately, Daniels passed away in 2004 and never saw his dream realized. This decision did not grant Métis and non-status Indians any rights under the Indian Act, but instead meant that they should turn to the federal government for improved programs and services rather than provincial interests, or rather than provincial governments, sorry. So for the National Day of Awareness for Missing and Murdered Indigenous Women, Girls, and Two-Spirit Peoples was first observed in 2010, which takes place on May 5th, sorry. Red Dress Day is a day to raise awareness and encourage learning to end violence against Indigenous women, girls, Two-Spirit, and gender diverse people. It also honors the thousands of murdered and missing Indigenous women, girls, and gender diverse people in Canada. Métis artist Jamie Black's Red Dress project installation, in which she hung an empty red dress to represent missing and murdered women, inspired Red Dress Day. As a result of her installation, red dresses have become the representation of the crisis. Estimates suggest that 4,000 Indigenous women and girls have gone missing or been murdered between 1956 and 2016. The Truth and Reconciliation Commission report, calls to action 41, urges the Canadian government to launch an investigation into the numerous instances of murdered and missing Indigenous women and girls. In 2023, the RCMP launched a campaign seeking the public's help to solve 10 outstanding cases of missing Indigenous women, girls, and 2S LGBTQI+ persons.
So now, as we approach the month of June in our presentation, it's important to remember that the entire month is dedicated to celebrating Indigenous history, culture, and contributions. This is a great opportunity to incorporate the Métis people and their rich heritage into lessons and activities. From the history of the Métis Nation to their ongoing cultural revitalization, June provides a perfect time to deepen our understanding and appreciation of Métis traditions alongside the broader Indigenous history of Canada. Next slide, please, Andrea. Okay. And then on October, I'm back to October. On June 21st, we celebrate National Indigenous Peoples Day, which is a day established in 1996 to honor and recognize the history, heritage, and diversity of First Nations, Inuit, and Métis peoples in Canada. This day is an opportunity to come together, share stories, and show respect for one another's cultures and traditions. It is important to remember that the National Indigenous Peoples Day celebrates all Indigenous peoples, not just First Nations. While many school boards host powwows to mark this occasion, it is essential to include diverse activities that reflect the cultures of Métis and Inuit peoples as well. For the Métis, some great ways to celebrate could include Métis games, fiddling, jigging, or sharing traditional Métis stories. These activities provide a fuller and more inclusive celebration of Indigenous cultures across Canada. You're on mute, Andrea.
Just saw that, sorry. So the final culturally significant day during your school year is the MMIWG self-governing agreement, which was signed in 2019. The signing of the self-government agreement was an historic victory for Métis citizens and community represented by the MMIWG. In the self-government agreement, Canada recognizes for the first time in history that the Métis communities represented by the Métis Nation of Ontario hold an inherent right to self-government and to self-determination. The self-government agreement also provides a clear path for the MNO to transform into a recognized public Indigenous government. After this transition, the new Métis government will have recognized lawmaking powers in the areas of citizenship, leadership selection, and internal operations. The self-government agreement locked in these steps so they cannot be swept away by changing political winds or circumstances. In this way, the self-government agreement sets the table for the next steps that the MNO will take to implement the agreement. Part of what we've been doing here at the MNO and Education Department is creating a grade 10 civics and citizenship guide focused solely around Métis governance. This is available online, and it's also included in the new secondary school education kit. And we will be posting the links for those at the end of the presentation. This is an excellent resource and an easy way to just incorporate this very current event into secondary school education. Tab?
All right, so this brings us to our questions about resources. So I want to thank you guys for your attention and listening in to our presentation. So we're now going to open the floor for questions that you might have about our Days of Significance. This resource was created by our Curriculum and Resource Advisors team, which is a small group of qualified teachers dedicated to supporting you. If you have any questions that we can't answer here, please feel free to contact the CRA team directly at crasupport@métisnation.org. They can help you go a little bit further into your lesson planning or any activities. Or like I said, if you need some more clarification, if there's any questions that we can't answer here. So I don't know if we want to go through the chat maybe first and answer some questions that are in there.
A few questions that came up that I recorded. One was people were asking if you're going to be sharing the presentation.
We'll have to
Right.
check on it, but we can
Right.
also have it so that if they reach out to us through our contact information that we'll share in the next slide, we can always see about giving them access to our presentation.
Okay. And another question was, how do we acknowledge Red Dress Day? We have been told not to display red dresses in our schools for fear of re-traumatizing FNMI students.
I had not heard that one before.
Perhaps the person that posted this question, would you like to unmute and address this a little more fully?
Hi there. Can you hear me?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yes, we can.
Hi, my name's Eunice O'Mahony. And the reason I brought this up is I'm in Ottawa, and the Ottawa board has Ottawa Carleton's district school board has said we shouldn't do this because we here in Ottawa we've got a very large Métis and Inuit community, and we have to be very careful because this is a real problem. It could absolutely re-traumatize. Many of them are, I mean, this is an intergenerational trauma, right? And yeah, so here in Ottawa, we're very careful not to do this, not to re-traumatize kids. So we yeah, just that's it. That's all I've got.
That's good point to make. There was also another suggestion in the comment to kind of gauge your teaching around the grade level that you're teaching, right? Depending on how old your students are or how young they are, you might want to give them age appropriate information. There could be other ways instead of displaying red dresses. Maybe it's just learning about the red dress without displaying them, maybe coloring them, maybe just choose more age appropriate ways and use age appropriate language to kind of present that.
Any other comments on that? One comment Fernanda just put up, it would be nice if you have a guest speaker that could help you explain the situation or teach about it.
Good point. We usually, so typically, as education and partnership advisors, we try to build relationships with the local community councils in and around your school boards, your school board districts. So for that, we usually look to the local voice there and see if there's anyone who has any stories to share and can bring in that local voice at the school board or school level. So that is always a possibility And we can always facilitate educators to reach out to the local council, Métis council in their area to see if there's a guest speaker that's available and able to come and speak.
And there was one here. Do you have the link for students wanting to learn the language?
Oh, I did share a link in the chat that brings people to our Métis language initiatives resources. So there's all kinds of, there's crossword puzzles, there's games.
Matching games, card games.
Stories. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I see Aaron just shared a link there as well. Okay, next
And
question.
again, if anyone wants anything more, we can always, like I said, reach out to us at the end and we can always share a few more links and whatever we have on hand.
Do you think it's appropriate to introduce these Métis language activities without the presence of a native speaker?
This is a great question, and it really comes down to cultural appropriation versus appreciation. As long as you're doing it in a respectful manner and acknowledging that you're not a native Métis language speaker, we're all for the promotion of Michif language in the school system. We have worked very hard with our Michif language initiatives team. Most of this has gone through our legal counsel as well. So we're proud to support those resources. And if you're not comfortable reaching to teach that, we do have resources available to help you feel a bit more comfortable with that.
And I mean, just to add to that, please keep in mind that these online resources were created to be used and explored. So the fact that they're posted online and they're made public and available, please use them. Don't be shy. They're there to learn and teach your students with.
Question about the moose hide campaign.
I am aware of it, but I don't know much detail regarding that. It's been a long time since I heard about it.
Same here.
Yeah, I had a little piece of moose hide on a pin at one point, but sorry about that.
Andrea, if I could just say something.
Absolutely. Deanna. Just to introduce Deanna, she is one of our curriculum resource advisors here at the Métis Nation of Ontario, and she is part of the team that created these excellent resources.
Thank you, Andrea. So the list, the Days of Significance list, was created with the Ontario Days in mind and for Métis students. The Moose Hide campaign is BC-led grassroots, and it's more focused on First Nations students.
Thanks, Deanna.
Kathy has a question about land acknowledgements. Kathy, would you like to unmute and ask?
Yes, hi. So our school is organizing a cultural celebration, and we have reached out to an Indigenous community to be part of that as well. And then there was thought or a question about there will be a time where we're thanking the people for coming, and then I had asked, well, how about doing a land acknowledgement? And there was some sort of maybe feedback that, like, and again, I said, well, maybe we need to ask the representatives who are going to be there, like, do you feel comfortable for us to say a land acknowledgement? Or is there some sort of undercurrent, like, where some Indigenous peoples might not want us to be saying the land acknowledgement? So I'm just putting that out there as a question, a general kind of question.
Thanks very much for that, Kathy. I am aware that the curriculum resource advisors are working on something. And again, this would be going through our legal team, but we don't have a problem with land acknowledgements.
And I guess maybe like this was sort of secondhand. Like, I spoke to one staff member and he was like, oh, well, the principal was saying, well, maybe we shouldn't because I don't know if people are feeling offended. And then I said, well, maybe we need to ask the people who are going to be there. So
Well, I would recommend the best course of action in this situation would be to reach out to your local Métis Community Council, and I can post contact information in the chat where to find that information. And then
sure.
reach out to them and get their input, because each community is going to be different. There's 32
Right.
different community councils across the province of Ontario, and
Okay.
each team is going to have a different set of opinions.
Right. So, and then just because it's like Thursday, right?
Oh,
So maybe we'll, maybe we'll talk to the people who are going to be there just to see their sense of, do we want to do this, or would you rather us not?
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you for your question.
You're welcome.
And then a related question to the Métis language activities, Indigenous art, worried about introducing it themselves.
Yes, I think Ray's responded to that in the chat. Ray Gardner is our supervisor here at the K-12 Education and Partnership Advisor team. I don't know if you want to speak to that directly, Ray.
Sure, not a problem. Can you hear me?
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, I just gotta mute some stuff, other stuff in the house. Yeah, so again, I would go back to your local community councils are your best resources to get folks to come in and speak to it. But I will say again, anything that is on our website or we're speaking about or we're producing for the K-12 sector is with us empowering you to be the one who can provide that knowledge. Again, I mean, we don't expect you to be experts, but it's really about the appreciation versus appropriation. Like, you wouldn't say you are a Métis beater unless you are one, but this is something that, let's take a look at, kids. It's not something that you should be ashamed to work with your class. And again, that's why we've developed a lot of these resources, and also our education kit is to provide you guys with the empowerment to teach the kids what they need to learn. If that makes sense.
And Ray, do you also want to address the list of Métis artists and authors? I know that you answered it directly in the chat, but would you like to address it verbally for everyone? Oh, perhaps she missed that. I'll make sure that everything that's in the chat is captured.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, I did miss it. Sorry. I'm working between headphones and not headphones, so I did miss the question. What was the other question? Sorry.
Somebody had asked about the list of Métis artists and authors.
Yeah. So again, it's something our culture team is diligently working on. Again, we're province wide, right? So just collecting these and, vetting them and everything is quite the process. Again, the people on your local community councils will know who is in your area. And a lot of it, they offer to come in and do themselves, because a lot of them are the knowledge holders and have background in Indigenous arts and all the things that you're looking for. So again, I would reach out to the community council first. We are also a resource. So if you contact us at our K-12 education email, we can sometimes point you in the right direction as well.
Okay, great. So I had two videos queued up from earlier, the Pally case and matching card games. Would you like to watch one of those or both?
Yeah, let's do both.
Okay. All right, let me share.
Basically what it was a guy who was hunting for food with his son and had made a decision that he was no longer going to hide. He'd been hiding his hunting all his life.
For years, like I said, since they found out they had the Métis rights, they we had been bringing our moose home. We'd clean it right in the backyard, cut it up down the basement. It was all part of the family thing that we did. So the morning they went out and they brought the moose home, there was no problem till later on in the night. They'd brought it home, skinned it, cleaned it, you know, we're cutting it up. And because somebody had a beef with my son, they called the MNR and they said it was, you know, they'd been hunting illegally, they were shooting at night, and that was something we never did, because you hunt for your meat, you hunt for your food, you know, you harvest all your meat for the winter. It was never anything that was wasted or done like that, but because of what they said, MNR come into and charged him for hunting without a license.
Steve, quite a character. I enjoyed him. He was, you know, he looked rough, he looked tough, but one of the nicest guys you'd ever meet in your life. You know, to take on a case that affected not only him, his son, Roddy, and Steve, but the whole Powley family, you know, I think was a big challenge.
It was an enormous task to take on. We had no money. M&O was operating out of Tony's attic in Ottawa. And we did very well all the way up. Trial, every level of court, the judges were on side, and we just kept getting better and better and better decisions out of the courts until we got the ringing endorsement at the Supreme Court of Canada.
The big thing was that with the Supreme Court, it usually takes them 10 months, a year, 18 months, 2 years for that decision to come down. And when we heard that the decision was coming down, I think after 6 months, we knew we'd won.
You know, Powley was to this day, it's a remarkable case in the sense that, you know, we ended up winning at every level. You know, right from the trial, you know, right through the Supreme Court of Canada, 14 judges have seen and heard the evidence, and we won at every level. It's a remarkable case in and of itself.
It was the first time really that anyone said, yes, Métis people are still here, and Métis people do exist, and Métis people have continued our way of life. To get that kind of recognition at the Supreme Court of Canada, like, what more could you ask for?
Mahatma Gandhi once said, it is your duty to break bad laws. And that's what Steve Powley broke that day. He broke a bad law, which the government were never going to change without us fighting them to get our rights as Métis to hunt in Ontario.
I must say, I was never so proud of Steve Powley. When he said, the hell with it, I am going to be who I am, I'm going to hunt if I wanna. The Creator put that food there for me and I'll take it. You know, I'll let them know who I am. It was time that they realized that we are here as a nation of people and we do have to exist. And we don't exist on only air, we have to eat. And the Powley case was a real good one. And when we all stood behind him, made him a strong person, which there'll be lots of Steve Powleys from now on that will say, well, if I need a piece of meat, I'm going to go out and get one, and that's it. But not to waste. Steve did not waste anything that he had. He went and got that meat, he was going to have it for the winter months. And I think it's a great thing.
When I would go to court for one of my harvesters as captain of the hunt, I would go to court with two things in my pocket, always, for the strength that I needed to do this. And one of the things was my father's harvesting card. He had passed away, so I have his harvesting card, and I brought that with me. And Steve had given me a necklace. It was a dog tag with the infinity symbol on it, and he had given it to me after one of his wins. I remember where. We were at Tony Belker's house in Ottawa, and he had given it to me there. So I go to court with two things in my pocket, always. My father's harvesting card and Steve Powley's necklace. That's how much he means to me. That's how much he means to the Métis people.
I've done this for my children.
me and my youngest son here, Rod, we discussed this problem and we said, well, let's go for it. Now my granddaughter, I mean, at 3 years old, she was grabbing a knife, heading to the basement to cut a chunk off a moose we had down there. And that's what it's for, it's my children. Like I said, for me anymore, I'm not looking for anything, I don't want anything, I just want my hunting rights for my family and myself. As long as I'm in this earth, let me alone, let me hunt where I should be hunting, where I live off the land. I mean, Métis, as far as I know my Métis family, we live off the land. We eat the meat off the land. So, but that's the reason I've done it, for my children and their children. I didn't see the bigger picture for all Métis at the time, I won't lie to you. But after the second court case, I started to see the broader picture, and after this last one, it's just, like I said, it's just scary. How many people it's actually going to help. So, and I'm glad if I can do it.
Okay, next video.
We don't have audio there.
Sash.
Thanks.
Fourrure de castor.
Poil de castor.
Beaver pelt. Broderie perlée.
Broderie perlée.
Beading. Voyageur.
Voyageur.
Voyageur. Raquette.
Raquette.
Snowshoe. Manteau de laine.
Capot.
Wool coat. Mocassin.
Mocassin.
Moccasin. Drapeau.
Drapeau.
Flag. Violon.
Violon.
Fiddle. Canot d'écorce.
Canot d'écorce.
Birch bark canoe. Poisson.
Poisson.
Fish. Jig.
Jig.
Jig. Cuillère.
Cuillère.
Spoon.
Interesting. Any last questions?
Just a quick question. Do you think it would be okay to use that matching video for like a Carnaval de Québec kind of activity?
Yes, that would be great because it would show the cross link between La Francophonie and the connection to the Michif language. It would be an excellent way to incorporate that.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, because it's like exactly what I wanted to do, but I hadn't found any resource for it yet. So that's fantastic.
Yep.
Okay, that's great. Thanks very much.
You're welcome. And then if there's no other questions, Andrea, did you want to pop up the slide on where they can access our K-12 kits? So if you're interested, you can order our elementary or secondary education kits by scanning the QR code that is provided on the screen here. Please keep in mind that orders may take some time to fulfill as we are assembling the kits as we go. Our team is small but dedicated, and we will do our best to process all orders as quickly as possible. We greatly appreciate your patience and understanding as we work to get these valuable resources out to you. So thank you for supporting Indigenous education. If you have any questions, I believe our emails are in the chat, myself and Andrea's personally, as well as our K-12 education at métisnation.org. You can follow up with us on the presentation slides here, and we can get those back to you.
Fernanda, we hope very much that we will be doing more of these presentations going forward.
And Kathy, good question. The education kits are a free resource. We're just trying to get them out into the classrooms, into teachers' hands so that they feel comfortable sharing the materials. So we have our curriculum and resource advisors have developed a science and tech education guide, and they have also developed a citizenship, civics and citizenship guide as well that's in there. There's some beautiful trilingual posters in there. They're huge. They're gorgeous, but there's lots of goodies. So like I said, please reach out to us. We can send you the link or scan the QR code and get your order in. Thank you guys for listening. We really appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
And I just have a few last comments. So in the next few days, you'll get a follow-up email. There'll be a link to the evaluation form if you don't get a chance to fill it in right away. In fact, I believe when you exit Zoom, it'll bring you to the form right away. You'll also get a list of other resources from OTF, such as the calendar for more OTF Connect sessions, let me think, the YouTube channel as well, which is often underutilized. And yes, you'll be receiving that by email. And you'll get a link, a direct link to this video. So lastly, I'd like to thank Andrea and Chantel for this insightful presentation on behalf of the Métis Nation of Ontario. You covered key moments in Métis history, including June as Indigenous History Month, the September 19th ruling, Orange Shirt Day, Harry Daniels and the Constitution, and the Daniels versus Canada case. As a veteran, I was especially moved by the recognition of Indigenous Veterans Day on November 8th, honoring the often overlooked sacrifices of Métis, First Nations, and Inuit veterans. The discussion on cultural appreciation versus appropriation was particularly meaningful, highlighting the importance of respecting and understanding Métis traditions rather than misusing or commercializing them. Thank you for sharing these important perspectives and deepening our appreciation and recognition of Métis history.